if you could be there, the unique travel experience that takes you back to great moments in history and then allows you to book your very own tour of that location. I am Veronica Journey, founder and president of Journey to Eternity Travel Destinations. We have an exciting show. Today's show features the wonder and excitement of the very first Christmas. We are bringing people back from that first Christmas, allowing you to hear their stories, and then helping you book your very own tour to that location. I am so excited to have with us Martha of Bethlehem, co-owner of the inn in which the Christmas child was born. Say hi, Martha.
Yes, we can book that for you. Oh, wait. Sorry. Hi. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Next we have Anna, curator of the amazing temple in Jerusalem and present when the Christmas child first visited that sacred site. I just can't wait for you to hear all about the beauty of that location. Let's welcome Anna.
That's right.
Thank you, Veronica. But I believe you're mistaken. I wasn't the curator at the temple. I was a widow who was living under the temple care.
Oh, really? My bad. And reading your bio, it said you were at the temple for more than 5 decades. I just assumed you had a job there.
Not a real job. I certainly helped out, but I was there a lot to fast and to pray.
Wait, you fasted and prayed for 5 decades? What kind of a vacation is that? I mean, but you do know the ins and outs of the temple, the beauty and the history of its construction. I mean, that is what people are wanting to see when they go back to visit first century Jerusalem.
Yes, I know all about the temple, but that really isn't the main attraction.
What? Not the main attraction? Okay. Who booked this guest? We are supposed to be booking Christmas tours to Israel. And we found a woman who fasted and prayed for decades? What does that have to do with Christmas?
Oh, I was at the first Christmas, and it was at the temple.
Great! Why don't you work on connecting those dots? I'm going to go over here to my other guest, Martha, who I know was there that first Christmas. Martha, why don't you tell us what it was like hosting the Christmas child at your inn?
Yes, sorry. Yes, we have you booked. I really have to go now. I'm on TV. I'm really sorry, Veronica. I'm just so busy. What was your question again?
The first Christmas. Tell us what it was like hosting the Christmas child at your inn.
The first Christmas, a child at my inn. I don't think I know what you're talking about.
What? Okay, who booked these guests? We are supposed to be selling packages to tours to Israel. We found a woman who fasted and prayed, one that wasn't there. We aren't going to sell any packages this way. Martha.
Yes.
Are there any other inns in Bethlehem?
No, ours is the only inn in our quaint historic town. If there's an out-of-town guest and they didn't have family to host them, we would be the place to go.
Well, quaint and historic is good. So you're sure you didn't have the Christmas child at your inn?
I'm really sorry. I'm just so busy. I see dozens of guests each day. I'd need more information.
It would have been around the census of the Roman Caesar Augustus. Each family was required to register in their hometowns. Jesus' family, Joseph and Mary, come from the line of the great King David. They would have registered in David's hometown, Bethlehem.
Does that ring any bells?
Wow. Whew. The time of the Augustus census. Those months were off the chain busy. Let me pull out my guest registration list and see if it jogs my memory.
Yes, you do that. Okay. Anna, why don't you tell us more about the temple, why you were there, and how it factors into the Christmas story?
Well, you see, I was a widow. I was married for 7 years when my husband tragically died. While I was part of the Jewish people, my tribe was Asher, Asher was one of the 10 tribes of Israel that had been exiled more than 700 years before. Most of my tribe was lost. When I lost my husband, I sort of lost everything.
So you turned to God and the temple?
Not really. God was always a part of our lives. I went to the temple because they had a system of taking care of orphans and widows, and I needed help.
And the temple was so beautiful. You never left. That will sell vacation packages.
No.
No.
No. Don't get me wrong. The temple is or was beautiful, but that wasn't why I stayed. I stayed at first for the food. But then I started to hear the Jewish scriptures being read, and I started to realize that there was a promise coming, a promise of a child to rescue us all. I don't know why, but I became convinced that one day I would see this child. I didn't want to miss my chance.
Aha!
Did you find it?
Wait, no. That isn't it. Nothing in the registrations, nothing in the walk-ins. No records during that time. I mean, it was nuts. People coming into town from all over. The population of our town almost doubled for an extended period of time. I had so much to do. Food, water, beds, animals, directions to holy sites, directions to the census site. I mean, I was going non-stop.
I'm not sure you ever stopped.
It's hard work running a business. I have to keep going and going. Are you sure we're talking about the same event?
Child of Bethlehem, born on the first Christmas, coming in from Nazareth. I mean, if yours was the only inn, he had to have been there.
Perhaps if I had a few more details.
Joseph was a carpenter. Mary would have been almost 9 months pregnant. A few months later, a group of magi would have entered the town for a few days, followed by the slaughter of the innocent.
Oh, everybody remembers those two events. The Magi were quite the scene. I had to clear my whole inn to make room for them. They paid 3 times the rates to stay there, and the slaughter of the innocent almost bankrupted us. No one wanted to be in Bethlehem after the death of the young children.
Let's move on. That's bad for business. So Anna, you were waiting at the temple simply because you thought you would see a child?
Yes, I was very lonely. I had lost my husband. I was dependent on the temple to survive, and a bit of a misfit due to my family lineage. I needed something to look forward to. The waiting gave me strength.
Wait, waiting gave you strength? That doesn't make any sense. I hate waiting.
Me too. I always have to be busy.
Martha, jog that memory of yours. We still have to get to the story of Bethlehem. Anna, how did waiting give you strength?
It's a bit of a mystery. The strength isn't found in the waiting, it's found in the Lord. There's a prophecy in the book of Isaiah, the same prophet who foretold the coming of the Christmas child. It says, "Those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength. They will mount up on wings as eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint." In the long days of waiting, I used to look up in the skies and see the birds soaring overhead. Then I would remember that the Lord was with me in the waiting.
And you did that for decades?
Yes, it was worth it.
So the Christmas child was the promise.
Yes. One day I was walking through the temple grounds when I noticed a young couple coming with an 8-day-old boy coming for dedication. There was something different about the whole situation. Joseph looked confident, but a bit in over his head. Mary looked innocent and delighted, almost as if her every move was in worship and awe of God. Her countenance beamed of reverence and worship, far beyond what you saw in our most genuine of priests. Then there was the child.
The child?
Yes, so simple, so helpless, so pure, but he had the aura of King David himself. I knew this child was different. My hunch was verified when the Holy Spirit fell on my good friend Simeon, who had been in the temple almost as long as me, waiting for the same child. He declared this child the hope of Israel. That's when I knew. I rushed over, took the child in my arms, and kissed him over and over again.
And you said the wait was worth it?
Absolutely. Having Jesus with you, even for a few moments, is always worth the wait.
Wait a minute.
Did you find the reservation?
No, but something is coming back to me. I do seem to remember one night answering a knock on the inn door. It was very late, dark, hard to see. A couple was there. The wife was very pregnant. They asked about a room, but there was no room. I didn't know what to do, so I called my husband. I think he helped them find a place with the animals to have shelter out of the weather. I just went on to do the next best thing to take care of my debts. Was that the child?
Anna, what happened after the child left?
Oh, there was quite a buzz in the temple for the next little while. By buzz, I mean that Simeon and I would not stop telling people about what we saw. For a while, people didn't believe us. But then, a few months later, a group of magi came to Jerusalem for a few days, talking about a star that foretold the coming of a king. Herod had the scribes searching for where he was born. They said, Bethlehem. People started asking Simeon and me questions. Rumors were circulating of a group of angels visiting shepherds outside of Bethlehem around the time of the child's birth. It was all so exciting. A while later, the child disappeared. Rumors said his family went to Egypt. Simeon and I did not live to see him return, but we knew this was the promised king. It was my great joy to get to meet him.
Shepherds, magi. That was the child. We sent him to a stable. I can't believe he was right there in front of my inn, and I missed him. I should have waited for a moment, but there was no room. There was no room.
Well, that is all we have time for today. I do hope you all have enjoyed this edition of If You Could Be There. Please remember, you can book your very own Journey to Eternity travel tour. But hurry, packages are going fast, so call today. Remember, don't wait. Well, maybe we all need to learn to wait a bit.
Our actors, shall we? There was no room. Maybe we should all take a few moments to wait a bit. I want to talk with us for just a few moments this morning about seeing Jesus. And because our theme is to relax a little bit, I'm going to sit down. I want to open with this question for us all. Will you have room for Jesus this Christmas? Will you have room for Jesus this Christmas? You know, I'm 47 years old, so this will be my 47th Christmas. If you were to look back over most of my Christmases, most of my time celebrating, it would basically be your kind of stereotypical, traditional, how you imagine Christmas to be. It was usually a happy time. It was gathered around family, sometimes extended, sometimes not. It was Christmas by the tree. Most Christmases we got what we asked for. I mean, it was usually just a wonderful, wonderful experience. And yet, what is fascinating as I was thinking about this is that there were a steady diet of Christmases that were hard, very hard. There was the holidays, there were times that could be very difficult. There was the time when we were driving down, it was Thanksgiving, but we were driving down to my grandparents' house for Thanksgiving and got the phone call that my aunt, who was about to get in the car to drive and meet us, had dropped dead of a heart attack all of a sudden. There was the Christmas season where one of my uncles died of an aneurysm. Last year, we were making plans to go back to spend Christmas with our family, and got the word that a few days before that Tiffany's grandmother had died. So we're packing clothes for a funeral in addition to all the Christmas gifts and the Christmas festivities. Some of the most difficult arguments that I had with my parents and strained relationships would manifest themselves around the Christmas season. They could be very, very challenging times. And whether it's the challenges of family dynamics, the challenges of grief, or just the busyness of the season, it can be a time and a place where making room for Jesus is very, very challenging. It's very, very hard. I want to show you one of my favorite Christmas ornaments. It's one that means a whole lot to me every Christmas time, is this little one right here. And it was a particularly challenging Christmas. My youngest daughter was due on Christmas Day. And she was born a couple days ahead of time, but when all that happened, my wife had the flu. It was a flu pandemic in the area we were living at the time, and the hospital really didn't know what to do about it. And so their solution was to separate baby from mom the moment of birth so that baby didn't get the flu that mom had, and keep her in the NICU until the mom's fever broke. And so sure enough, that's what happened. She gave birth, and they say, here's the baby. They rushed the baby off to the NICU. And it was a particularly challenging time because I had 3 kids at home that needed to be cared for. We were basically staying with a babysitter. I had a wife who was sick with the flu. I had a daughter who was in the NICU, and I'm trying to figure all these things out. And we have a tradition, which I'll talk about a little bit later, of having Christmas ornaments that mark our kids' year. And I remember we hadn't got the baby's first Christmas ornament yet because we weren't sure. And so I spent some time going from Hallmark to Hallmark trying to find a Christmas ornament 2 days before Christmas for baby's first Christmas. And this one was literally one of the only ones that they had left. And while it's not what I would call the best designed ornament of all time, it is absolutely one of my favorites, because it marked a very important moment where I needed to make room for Jesus. See, when we created this play that kind of brought these themes, because this story has all of the themes that we see at Christmas time. It has busyness, it has grief, it has those types of things that were going on at that first Christmas. And so I want to just take a few moments to introduce you to the players that really were or were not there. And the first one, of course, is Martha. And she is absolutely a fictional historical character we created, and we gave her the name Martha to be cute. But odds are the innkeeper did have a wife, and we took her story from one verse in Scripture that Luke gives us. In Luke chapter 2, verse 7, it says this, "And Mary gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger." And a manger, of course, is a feeding trough for animals, because there was no place for them in the inn. And I want to just, because I'm a teacher and I like to be accurate, I do want to let everyone know that there is some debate about what in the inn actually means. You know, we've got basically 3 views. The first view is our nostalgic view of Christmas, the one that's in all of your nativity scenes, is on all the Christmas cards. It's the picture of a stable somewhere outside of town, and there's a star in the stable, and the animals and the wise men and the shepherds, they're all there. That this was a barn-like structure that would have been outside the town that Mary might have been at. And that is certainly a possibility, but that's more the nostalgic view of it all. The more traditional view that's been held by most scholars for a very, very long time, that it was likely a cave somewhere outside the town where animals would have been kept. It would have been a structure, but a cave. And again, that is a possibility. It absolutely is a possibility. But the more likely one, as scholars have started to look into it, is actually something like this. And this is a picture of a typical first century home in Bethlehem. And what you'll notice there is that on the lower floor, there was a place for animals. Animals were your lifeline. Animals were how you kept the family going. And so on particularly bad weather, you would bring in your most valuable animals into the little area inside your living quarters to keep them safe from the elements. And the family would live on the second floor, or as it was called at the time, the upper room where you would have food and those kinds of things. And so the inn at Bethlehem, if it was a full-on inn, probably would have been something like this. It would have had a variety of guest rooms on that second floor. So it could have meant that when there was no room for them in the inn, therefore they were in a manger, simply could have meant that all the guest rooms, the proper rooms for the guests, were full. And so the only thing left for Mary and Joseph was the area for the animals within the dwelling. And when the baby's born, they put the baby in what you would feed the animals. But regardless of what the actual setting was, whoever this innkeeper was, whoever the innkeeper's wife was, whoever was going on, all the other things would have been true. It would have been a busy season. The census would have easily doubled the size of Bethlehem for an extended period of time. There would have been, the innkeeper would probably about the same age of Mary. She would have been very, very young, and she's caring for guests and food and animals and all that kind of stuff. All the pressures of that season definitely would have been on the family that maintained the inn. And then, of course, we have Anna, who we get her story out from Luke a little bit later on in chapter 2, who was a real character living the temple. And this is what Luke tells us about her story. He says this, and there was a prophetess, Anna, the daughter of Puniel of the tribe of Asher. She was advanced in years, having lived with her husband 7 years from when she was a virgin, and then as a widow until she was 84. She did not depart from the temple, worshiping and fasting and prayer night and day. And coming up at that very hour, she began to give thanks to God and to speak to him to all who were waiting for the redemption of Jerusalem. She was there on the 8th day of Jesus' life where Mary and Joseph would have brought him to the temple for a traditional dedication. And she saw something different. And she understood that this child was the redemption of Israel. I want you to notice a couple of things about Anna's story. The first one is this, is that Anna was quite old. Scholars think that she was actually 84. There is, however, some interesting ways to interpret the Greek there. So some scholars will argue that she might have been as old as 100, based on how you interpret that Greek phrase. Here's the other thing I want you to understand is this. She was in the temple because of grief. Her husband had died. She was a misfit because of her family lineage. And she needed a place to go to be rescued. And so she went to the temple to get the rescue. And there, under their care, she started to get a picture of this idea of the Messiah that was going to bring a hope to Israel. And she waited a long time to see it. And then I also want you to notice this, is that she was thankful. She gave thanks in the temple. And when Jesus appeared, even as an 8-day-old infant, she was ready for him. She was ready for him. So how do you see Jesus at Christmas time? Just give you 3 guiding questions. The first one is, if we want to see Jesus at Christmas time, we need to understand, why do we miss him? Why is it that we miss Jesus? Well, there's several reasons. The first reason we miss Jesus is because of grief. Anna's life was impacted deeply by the loss of her family. And listen, while we all know that this is supposed to be the most wonderful time of the year, grief is a real reality this time of year. And if you've lost families, you've lost traditions, you've lost loved ones, you're walking through stressful circumstances, and there's all this pressure to be happy, you can feel this grief in a very, very powerful, powerful way. And grieving gives us the opportunity to miss Jesus. Joy can be hard when we've experienced loss. You miss Jesus because of tradition. You see, at some point in time, we got all these traditions and these expectations and these family things that have to get done. And after a while, they're fun when they all get started, but after a while, they start doing just because it's what we're supposed to do. You have to do it. You know, what's interesting is on the day that Anna and Simeon were in the temple and Jesus walks in, there were probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people bustling around the temple and doing traditional religious things. And only 2 people saw Jesus for who he was. See, we get these places where we think so much about what we should do that we miss what we could see. We miss Jesus because of busyness. We're just running back and forth. We're like Martha on the play. You always have to be busy. We always have to be busy. It's the next thing. It's the next thing. It's the next thing. It's the next thing. And suddenly, Christmas is about fulfilling expectations and getting the to-do list done, and not about stepping back and understanding what the season really is all about. We can miss Jesus because we're just tired of waiting. Maybe you're waiting on an answered prayer. Maybe you're waiting on a new breakthrough in the job. Maybe you're waiting on a child to return. Maybe you're waiting and waiting and waiting, and you come to the Christmas season, all of a sudden everything's happened, and it's supposed to be this way, and it's not that way, and you're just tired of waiting. And so you become cynical. You become a Grinch or a Scrooge because you're just tired of waiting. So that's how we miss him. And so then the question, because of those things are realities, then how do we see Jesus? How do we see Jesus this time of year? You know, it's interesting, in the childhood story of Jesus that Luke gives us, he uses a phrase about Mary twice. And I think it's one of the most powerful, instructive phrases in the Bible. It says this, it says, "But Mary treasured up all of these things and pondered them in her heart." All the things that were going on with Jesus' childhood, she treasured them and she pondered them. See, here's the first thing that has to happen if you want to see Jesus, is Jesus has to be your treasure. Jesus has to mean something to you. Jesus has to be the one of value in your heart. You see, Mary treasured Jesus, and I know, I get it. Listen, Mary was Jesus' mother. One of the most unique relationship with Jesus in the human existence. And as any mother, every mother treasures their child. And so there was this treasuring that happened with Jesus that was unique to Mary as the mom. And that was a reality. But here's what's also true is we know that Mary watched Jesus grow up and watched Jesus die and saw Jesus resurrected. We know all those happened. What we often forget is that then Jesus went back to heaven. So Mary lived a portion of her life the way we do, where her king and her God and her son is no longer with her in presence, physical presence at least. And yet, she treasured them. You see, it wasn't just the mother-son relationship that caused her to treasure these things. It was the God-worshiper relationship that caused her to treasure these things. So it starts by treasuring Jesus. We see what we treasure. But then she didn't leave there. She allowed the treasuring to be stewarded by pondering what was going on. Something would happen and she would take note of it and she'd step back and she would think about it. An important event would happen, she'd step back and she would think about it. The angel appears and announces what's going to happen. The shepherds show up, the magi show up. Anna and Simeon are in the temple. They flee to Egypt. And all of those things, she stepped back, and when these things would happen, she would treasure Jesus. She would ponder what was going on in her heart. And keep in mind what's going on in her life. She's been uprooted from her home, given birth in a place where animals are. Shepherds on a loud night after giving birth with no anesthesia are there to witness everything. Then you got these magi. Then you have to flee for your life to a foreign country. And all this stress and all this business, all these things, she stepped back and she said, I'm going to treasure Jesus. And I'm going to take a moment to ponder and think about what's going on in my life right now. So she made room. Why do I have this ornament? I don't even remember how we started it, but when my oldest children were quite young, we started buying them ornaments every year to mark something about their life that year. So every year, that's what we do. At some point in time, we load up our van, go over to Hallmark, and pay way too much for Christmas ornaments to mark different things in their life. And sometimes it's things that mark their life, and sometimes there's interest. We got more Star Wars ornaments than I know what to do with. But you see, for us, decorating the Christmas tree is not just a tradition. It's a walk of remembrance across all the places that God's been faithful to our family. And every morning I sit in my chair, open up my Bible, and I look at my Christmas tree, and I see ornaments like this that remind me of God's faithfulness in time of need. It's an opportunity to sit back and ponder Jesus even through some of the more difficult seasons in life. You see, we see him when we treasure him and we ponder him. So then, if we treasure and ponder him, the last one is, what will we find? Well, with Jesus, we will find comfort in grief. Comfort in grief. Isaiah, when he is about to give one of his great prophecies of the coming of Jesus, he starts off chapter 40 of his work with this verse. It says, "Comfort, comfort my people, says your God." He says, listen, one of the reasons God is going to send the redemption of Israel, one of the reasons God is going to send this child is so that in your place of grief, God himself will comfort you. See, Jesus comes to you, especially at this time. He says, listen, I see your grief, I see your pain, and I'm willing to not only sit with you in it, but because of the power of the Holy Spirit, I can give you hope and comfort in the midst of that grief. You find grief and pain when you make room for Jesus. We find life in tradition. The Jews were incredibly traditional people. Everything they did had a tradition. And over time, those traditions took on a life of their own and actually created barriers from seeing Jesus. Again, only 2 people saw who Jesus was that first Christmas in the temple. Paul would later tell us something about traditions, and it wasn't about Christmas, but it was about traditions itself. And he said this in Colossians. He says, listen, let no one pass judgment on you in question of food or drink or with regard to a festival or new moon or Sabbath. In other words, listen, there are going to be traditions, and some are going to have high opinions, some are going to have low opinions. Don't get messed up with all of that. Let me tell you the key. These are shadows of things to come, but the substance belongs to Christ. You see, what traditions are meant to be are teaching tools that point you to the substance. And when you understand that the substance is Jesus, the joy of all joys, you find life in those traditions when you make room for Jesus, who is the substance of it all. When you make room for Jesus, what will you find? You will find rest in your busyness. Instead of going and going and going and going and becoming exhausted, Jesus looks at you and says, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Rest for your soul. A rest that is not dependent upon the to-do list or the get things done reality. You can find rest in that busyness. When we make room for Jesus, we find strength in the waiting. If you're waiting on a breakthrough, if you're waiting on a new job, if you're waiting on a healing and you're just kind of tired of waiting, as Ana told us in this skit, Isaiah in this great chapter about the coming of Jesus reminds us, hey, listen, youth grow tired and weary, young men stumble and fall, but those who hope or wait on the Lord will renew their strength. They'll soar on wings as eagles. They'll run and not grow weary. They'll walk and not faint. You see, what it is that in the frustration of the waiting, it's just reaching your arms out to God and understanding that the great birds that soar allow the wind to carry them. You allow God to carry you in the trials. Why? Why do you find all of this when you make room for Jesus? Well, it's because Jesus came to give you abundant life. Jesus came to give you abundant life. He says so in John chapter 10. He says, I came that you may have life and have it abundantly. You see, while you are made to experience grief, you're not made to be the slave of grief. While you are made to experience traditions, you're not made to be a slave to the traditions. While you are made to be busy at times, you're not made to be the slave of busyness. While you are made to learn how to wait, you're not bound to the slavery of waiting. Jesus came to give you abundance of life in all of those things. You were made for more than this. And when we find Jesus, we have the access to an abundance of life now, as well as an abundance of life in eternity. It comes down to one simple question. Will you have room for Jesus this Christmas time? I want to ask all of you to stand. I'm going to have the worship team come out. Just go ahead and bow your heads for me. Ushers, you can go ahead and come forward. Years later, many years after the first Christmas, the disciple John had a vision of Jesus. And in that vision, Jesus tells him something. He says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him and he with me." So let me ask you, what kind of heart do you have? Do you have the heart of the temple courts? Where, yeah, there's grief and there's waiting and there's things that are uncertain, but man, if Jesus walks in today, I'd see him and I'd recognize him. Or is your heart like the inn? Jesus comes and knocks, and there's no room. Because what he wants more than anything is to be welcomed in, so that he can sit at the table of your heart. And if he finds grief, he can give comfort. If he finds discouragement, he can give hope. If he finds busyness, he can give peace. If he finds duty and tradition, he can give life, because he wants to give that to you abundantly. What is he going to find when he knocks on the door of your heart this Christmas season? Let's just pray together. First of all, if you're here this morning and you're like, I've never actually asked Jesus to come into my heart and given him room there, and you want to do that, it's really very simple. You just invite him in. You just say, Jesus, today I'm giving you my life. I'm inviting you into my heart. I don't understand it all yet, but I'm trusting in your life, death, and resurrection to rescue me. And I want you to be a part of my life, so I'm giving my life to you today. Now, if that's you this morning, I want you to take one additional step. And on that Connect card that Pastor Adam mentioned earlier, on the back of it is a prayer card, and there's a spot where it says, I gave my life to Christ. If you check that, we receive our offering, put it in the bucket, and we want to give you some information on how you can continue that walk. For the rest of you, I just want you to just take a moment and evaluate, hey, have I made room for Jesus this season? And if not, let's just do it right here. Just say, Holy Spirit, we want to take right now to allow you to come into our hearts this season, to recognize your faithfulness and your hope and your comfort. Lord, we want to recognize and treasure you, and we want to ponder the things of our life so that we don't miss you this season. And we thank you for being ready to be there with us. In your name we pray. Amen.